Every coordinate on the map holds a secret. Every boundary line hides a dark truth that was meant to remain buried forever. Welcome to Continental Gridline Mysteries, where we trace the unmarked paths of history's most chilling enigmas and investigate the secrets hidden between the lines. Today, our search takes us to the rain-swept landscape of the Pacific Northwest, to a cold November evening in 1971, and a case that would completely rewrite the annals of modern crime. A man boards a plane, demands a fortune, steps out into a raging storm, and vanishes from the face of the earth. This is the mystery of D.B. Cooper. The rain in Portland during late November does not merely fall from the sky. It seems to suspend itself in the very atmosphere, a heavy, cold, gray mist that clings to the tarmac, blurs the halo of the runway lights, and wraps the entire Pacific Northwest in an eerie, muffled silence. It was Wednesday, November 24th, 1971. The air was thick with the scent of burning jet fuel and wet pine needles, a damp cold that seeped through the heavy winter coats of the travelers rushing through the terminal. It was the eve of Thanksgiving, one of the busiest travel days of the entire year, a chaotic symphony of families reunited and businessmen anxious to return home. Amidst this bustling sea of winter fashion, heavy wool coats, and colorful suitcases, walked a man who seemed almost designed to be entirely forgotten. He was a masterclass in the art of blending into the background, a shadow moving through a brightly lit terminal. To anyone passing him by, he was simply another middle-aged professional heading home. He was dressed in a dark, well-pressed business suit, a black clip-on tie held in place by a small mother-of-pearl pin. In his right hand, he carried a heavy, black attaché case, the sort of hard-sided luggage favored by corporate executives and accountants of the era. He approached the counter of Northwest Orient Airlines, his movements calm, deliberate, and entirely free of the frantic energy that characterized the rest of the terminal. He spoke in a low, polite, remarkably soothing voice, asking for a single, one-way ticket on Flight 305. He pulled out a clean $20 bill to pay the fare. He signed his ticket with a name that was as ordinary as his appearance, a name that would soon become synonymous with the greatest unsolved mystery, Dan Cooper. He walked down the jet bridge and boarded the aircraft, a sleek, three-engined Boeing 727. This plane was a marvel of mid-century engineering. It possessed a rare, hidden feature that would soon become the linchpin of a daring escape, a set of retractable passenger stairs located directly underneath the tail. Cooper made his way to the very back of the passenger cabin, taking his seat in row 18, seat E. This was a strategic choice, a vantage point from which he could observe the entire cabin. He settled into the vinyl seat, placing his black attaché case flat on the floor beneath the seat in front of him. From his pocket, he produced a pair of dark wraparound sunglasses, sliding them onto his face. Behind those dark lenses, his eyes remained invisible. As the three powerful jet engines roared to life, Flight 305 taxied out onto the rain-slicked runway and lifted off into the low, heavy cloud cover. Inside the cabin, the atmosphere was relaxed, the 36 passengers settling in for the short flight, reading newspapers or chatting quietly. Standing near the rear galley was Florence Schaffner. Cooper caught her eye and ordered a drink, a simple glass of bourbon and soda, paying for it with another $20 bill. But as she handed him his drink, he leaned forward slightly and pressed a small, folded piece of paper into her palm. He told her she had better look at the note. He told her, with a chilling lack of emotion, that he had a bomb in his briefcase. The air in the rear of the cabin suddenly seemed to turn to ice. Schaffner opened the note to find a message written in neat, clear, all-capital letters. The note demanded that she sit beside him immediately. Cooper reached down and unlatched the heavy black attaché case. Inside were 8 red cylinders, resembling sticks of dynamite, bound by thick copper wires and a large battery. It was a terrifyingly professional device. Cooper closed the lid, clicked the latches shut, and began to speak, his voice a calm, hypnotic baritone. He laid out his demands with cold precision. He required $200,000 in negotiable United States currency, specifically in $20 bills, unmarked and non-sequential. He demanded 4 parachutes, 2 main parachutes and 2 reserve parachutes. He made it clear that a fuel truck must be waiting on the tarmac. Schaffner stood up and made her way to the cockpit to deliver the message. Inside, the atmosphere transformed instantly from a routine flight into a high-stakes hostage crisis. Captain Scott alerted Northwest Orient Airlines operations, who in turn alerted the Federal Bureau of Investigation, local police, and the president of the airline. The airline would comply. The FBI contacted the Seattle First National Bank, scrambling staff to open the vaults and count out 10,000 $20 bills. Agents frantically began photographing every single bill, recording the serial numbers to create a master database that would allow them to track the money. Meanwhile, authorities began a search for the 4 parachutes. A local skydiving school in Issaquah was contacted and instructed to deliver the equipment. As the race unfolded on the ground, Flight 305 was instructed to hold. For nearly 2 hours, the plane circled high above the gray waters of Puget Sound. To the passengers, the delay was explained as a minor mechanical problem. They remained entirely calm, completely unaware that a man in the back row held their lives in his hands. Throughout this tense delay, Cooper's behavior remained remarkably civilized. He chatted politely, insisting on paying for his drinks and refusing any complimentary items. He was an enigma who seemed to possess a deep, intimate knowledge of the aviation industry and the specific technical layout of the Boeing 727. At 5:43 in the afternoon, Flight 305 finally touched down on the wet runway of Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Night had fallen. The plane was taxied to a remote, brightly illuminated section of the airfield. Cooper ordered all window shades pulled down, preventing any police snipers from getting a shot. An airline employee walked across the tarmac, carrying a heavy canvas bag filled with the cash and the parachutes. The trade was completed quickly and without incident. Cooper allowed all 36 passengers and 2 of the flight attendants to exit the aircraft, leaving only himself and the essential flight crew on board. With the passengers safe, the remaining crew began the process of refueling. But the tension was palpable, exacerbated by a sudden mechanical failure in the fueling truck. Mucklow watched Cooper closely, expecting him to fly into a rage. Instead, Cooper simply sat in his seat, his expression unreadable behind his dark glasses, a statue of absolute patience. Once refueling was completed, Cooper summoned the captain and presented him with a highly unusual flight plan. He ordered the plane to fly toward Reno, Nevada. He demanded that the aircraft fly at an altitude of no more than 10,000 feet, with the landing gear extended and the wing flaps set to 15 degrees. He selected a flight path known as Victor 8, a low-altitude aerial corridor that ran directly over the rugged, densely forested foothills of the Cascade Mountain range. At 7:40 in the evening, the heavy Boeing 727 roared back into the dark, stormy sky, heading south into a wall of freezing rain and wind. Cooper ordered Tina Mucklow to go to the cockpit and close the heavy curtain. She saw him wrapping the money bag around his waist and adjusting the parachute straps. Minutes later, inside the cockpit, a red warning light began to flash. The aft passenger stairs had been unsealed and lowered. The temperature inside the plane plummeted. Captain Scott called back to the rear of the plane. Through the static and the roar of the wind, a single, cold, monosyllabic response came back from the darkness. No. At 8:13 in the evening, as the aircraft flew through a blinding rainstorm, the hijacker stepped out into the black abyss. He had jumped into a desolate landscape of jagged peaks, he carrying only a parachute, a briefcase bomb, and 20 pounds of cash. He vanished into the freezing night, leaving behind no footprints and no witnesses. When the aircraft landed in Reno, authorities found only an empty cabin. On the seat lay the black clip-on tie and the mother-of-pearl pin Cooper had worn. The man had vanished. The search that followed was one of the largest manhunts in history. Codenamed Norjack, the investigation mobilized hundreds of soldiers and search teams into the Cascade Mountains. They scoured the rugged terrain around the Lewis River and the icy waters of Lake Merwin. Helicopters with thermal cameras flew over the canopy. They found absolutely nothing. The FBI distributed the serial numbers of the 10,000 $20 bills to banks and casinos. Yet, as the years passed, not a single one of the bills was ever found in circulation. Many believed Cooper had not survived the jump. They argued that jumping into a freezing storm without gear was a death sentence, his body left to decay in some remote corner of the wilderness. But those who believed in the legend argued otherwise. They pointed to his meticulous planning and expert knowledge as evidence of a highly trained military operative. Then, in February of 1980, a breakthrough occurred. A boy named Brian Ingram found 3 decaying packets of $20 bills buried in the sand at Tina Bar. The money was heavily damaged by water and silt, but the serial numbers were still legible. The FBI confirmed these were the exact bills given to D.B. Cooper. Over the next several decades, the FBI investigated more than 1,000 suspects. Men like Richard McCoy, a Vietnam veteran who pulled an identical heist just months later. Another suspect, Dwayne Weber, confessed on his deathbed, "I am Dan Cooper." His widow found handwritten notes on the geography of the Pacific Northwest and aviation books. In July of 2016, the FBI officially suspended the active review of the D.B. Cooper case. The file was archived, marking the end of an era. Today, D.B. Cooper has become an indelible piece of American folklore, a modern-day Robin Hood myth about a man who pulled off the impossible and vanished into the rain. He remains a phantom in a business suit, but on the great gridline of history, no secret stays hidden forever. Thank you for investigating with us today on Continental Gridline Mysteries. Subscribe and turn on notifications to join our search, because behind every clue, there is a story. Until next time, keep your eyes on the gridline.